Do you like spending time alone with me like this?
What happened to the unforgettable faces of all in the family? Once upon a time, television didn't tiptoe around controversy. It stared straight into it. In 1971, All in the Family didn't just premiere, it detonated. It shattered sitcom conventions and cracked open living rooms across America, forcing families to confront what they'd rather avoid: racism. Sexism va generational divide. At the center sat Archie Bunker, gruff and unfiltered, a man both laughable and painfully real. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Edith, tender and naive, yet unexpectedly wise. Across the street, George and Louise Jefferson challenged everything Archie believed. Encircling them all were voices: young, liberal, female, black, working class, each one clashing, crying, or quietly enduring. They weren't just characters. They were America in all its fury and hope. Today, the show survives in reruns, textbooks, retrospectives. But what are the people behind it? The actors who poured their lives into these roles. Where did they go when the stage lights dimmed? Some soared, some vanished, some struggled with pain behind their smiles. In this tribute, we trace the final chapters of 8 unforgettable lives. Not just how they lived, but how they left. If stories like these matter to you, stories of brilliance, battles, and everything in between, then consider subscribing. There's a whole world behind the curtain, and we're just getting started. 1. Carroll O'Connor. Archie Bunker. He was never supposed to be a star. He didn't have the matinee looks, the easy smile, or the smooth charm of leading men. What Carroll O'Connor had was something deeper. A fire beneath the surface, a crackling intelligence, and a simmering rage that, when channeled into the character of Archie Bunker, became electric. Born in New York City to working-class Irish parents, O'Connor served in the Merchant Marines during the war, studied literature in Montana, and pursued acting in Ireland before returning to the U.S. He wasn't young when fame found him, just seasoned, sharp, and utterly uncompromising. When Norman Lear cast him as Archie, a loudmouthed, blue-collar bigot with a surprisingly tender core, television changed forever. O'Connor brought layers to Archie that no script alone could capture. The wounded pride of a man watching the world pass him by, the stubbornness of someone raised on fear, and the raw vulnerability that peeked through when the insults faded. Privately, O'Connor couldn't have been more different. He was a passionate liberal, a defender of free speech, and a quiet intellectual who often rewrote dialogue to protect the moral balance of scene. He believed in accountability, on screen and off, but the applause came with shadows. His son Hugh battled addiction for years before taking his own life. The pain nearly destroyed him. He fought back by going public, using his grief to campaign for stricter drug laws and support systems for families like his. It was raw, controversial, and deeply human, just like his best performances. Carroll O'Connor passed away in the summer of 2001 from a heart attack brought on by complications from diabetes. He was 76. With his death, American television lost not just an actor, but a conscience dressed in sarcasm. A man who forced the country to laugh at its ugliest truths and then think twice. 2. Jean Stapleton, Edith Bunker. She didn't shout. She didn't fight. She didn't need to. Jean Stapleton, with her high-pitched voice and fluttering nervousness, created one of the most quietly revolutionary characters in television history, Edith Bunker. Behind that trembling voice was a steel spine. Born Jean Murray in Manhattan, she came from a family of performers, though her early path was far from glamorous. She worked as a secretary while chasing roles on the New York stage. For decades, she paid her dues, building a reputation as a gifted character actress in theater, especially in musicals like Damn Yankees and Bells Are Ringing. She wasn't a star, not yet. Then came 1971, and with it, a role that would change everything. As Edith Bunker, the ever-loyal, ever-gentle wife of Archie, Jean Stapleton gave audiences a masterclass in subtlety. On the surface, Edith was the punchline. Slow to understand, quick to forgive. But Stapleton laced her with warmth, wisdom, and quiet strength. She let us laugh, then feel ashamed for laughing. And she never once played her as stupid. Off-screen, Stapleton was fiercely private, thoughtful, and deeply committed to her craft. She was nothing like Edith, politically active, intellectually curious, and selective with her roles. She rejected offers to reprise the character, believing that Edith had said all she needed to say. And when Edith's death was written into Archie Bunker's place. The episode aired with no dramatic music, no overacting, just a quiet void and a grieving Archie. It remains one of the most understated and devastating moments in sitcom history. In her later years, Jean continued to act in film, TV, and on stage. But she never sought the spotlight again. She didn't have to. She had already etched herself into television immortality. Jean Stapleton died peacefully in 2013. She was 90, and in her absence, the world felt just a little less kind, a little less patient, and a little less wise, like Archie, left alone at the kitchen table, waiting for a voice that would never call his name again. 3. Sherman Hemsley, George Jefferson. He burst onto the screen like a firecracker in a business suit. Short in stature, big in attitude, voice always 1 decibel too loud. Sherman Hemsley didn't just play George Jefferson. He was George Jefferson, but the man behind the swagger was far more complex and far more private than the character that made him immortal. Born in Philadelphia, raised by a single mother, Sherman knew struggle early. After serving in the Air Force, he worked overnight shifts at the post office while studying acting by day. His rise was slow and silent, built on small roles and big dreams. Then one night on a Broadway stage in Purley, Norman Lear spotted him and waited 2 years until Sherman was ready to take on a role that would change his life. George Jefferson was more than just a sitcom character. He was America's first unapologetically successful black businessman on primetime television. Proud, ambitious, and wonderfully combative. His clashes with Archie Bunker were sharp, fearless, and culturally seismic. But Sherman didn't just shout. He knew when to pause, when to let George's humanity flicker beneath the bluster. Off camera, Sherman was nothing like George. Soft-spoken, intensely private, he avoided fame's circus whenever he could. He never married, had no children, and lived quietly in El Paso in his final years. He spent his downtime not in Hollywood hotspots, but at home, enjoying jazz, spiritual studies, and the company of a close-knit circle of friends. His work, however, never stopped resonating. After the Jeffersons, he led the series Amen, lent his voice to dinosaurs, and reunited with Isabel Sanford in commercials and tributes that reminded the world just how iconic their chemistry was. No matter where he appeared, the audience still saw the walk, the sneer, the laugh, and remembered. Sherman Hemsley passed away in 2012, leaving behind a legacy that refused to fade. Even in death, he remained elusive. No tell-all interviews, no public confessions, just silence and the echoes of laughter from living rooms across generations. Some actors chase fame. Sherman Hemsley made history and then quietly slipped out the back door, leaving his alter ego still strutting proudly across the screen. 4. Isabel Sanford, Louise Jefferson. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. Where George Jefferson stormed into a room, Louise simply stood, and the room adjusted around her. Isabel Sanford gave us a woman of quiet strength, dignity, and fire. She was the anchor in the storm, the steady hand behind the whirlwind that was George. But her own journey, from Harlem stages to television history, was a triumph hard one. Born in New York City, the youngest and only surviving child of 7, Isabel's path was marked by resilience from the beginning. Her mother disapproved of acting, so Isabel sneaked out to perform in amateur nights at the Apollo. She married young, had 3 children, and supported her family while working menial jobs. When her husband died in 1960, She packed up her life and moved to Los Angeles. Not to escape, but to begin. Hollywood wasn't eager for black actresses, especially not single mothers in their 40s. But Sanford didn't ask for permission. She carved her own space, scoring small roles in TV and film, including a standout turning Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Then came All in the Family, and with it, Louise Jefferson. As Louise, she balanced grace with grit. Her scenes with Archie were battles of wit, not volume. She smiled less than Edith, but felt more. When the Jeffersons spun off in 1975, Sanford stepped into sitcom history as the first African-American woman to win an Emmy for lead actress in a comedy. She never let the title Wife of George define her. Louise was her own storm, her own light. But the spotlight didn't change her. Isabel was known for her warmth, her professionalism, and her devotion to family. She raised her children away from the chaos of Hollywood and avoided the pitfalls that swallowed so many others. She made her mark, then stepped back with grace. In her final years, she remained active, appearing in commercials, award shows, and guest spots. Always proud, always Louise. In 2004, just months after receiving her long-overdue star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Isabel Sanford passed away from heart disease. She was surrounded by family. And just like that, the voice of reason in America's most famous fictional household fell silent. But her legacy endures. In every woman who holds her ground, in every scene where quiet strength speaks louder than rage. 5. Mike Evans, Lionel Jefferson. He was calm, sharp, and quietly brilliant, the kind of presence that didn't need to raise its voice to make a point. As Lionel Jefferson, Mike Evans stood toe-to-toe with Archie Bunker, delivering comebacks so smooth they left the old man speechless. But off-screen, Evans was more than just an actor. He was a quiet revolutionary. Born in North Carolina and raised in Los Angeles, Mike came from a working-class family. His father a dentist, his mother a school instructor. He was barely out of acting school when he landed the role of Lionel in All in the Family. At just 21, he stepped into one of the most provocative shows in American television history and made it better. Lionel wasn't just the black neighbor. He was smart, composed, and occasionally mischievous, often baiting Archie into revealing just how ridiculous his prejudices really were. Evans delivered those moments not with anger, but with clarity, forcing viewers to confront bias through humor and reason. But acting was never his only passion. While still on the show, Evans began working behind the scenes. Together with writing partner Eric Monty, he co-created Good Times, another Norman Lear sitcom, and one of the first to center on an African-American family. It was a groundbreaking move, but also a demanding one. The weight of writing, producing, and surviving in a competitive industry took its toll. He left the Jeffersons to focus on Good Times, handing Lionel's role to another actor. He returned briefly to the Jeffersons in the late 1970s, but the spark had faded. His role diminished, and soon, he disappeared from television altogether. There were no scandals, no tabloid headlines, just silence, a man stepping away on his own terms. In the 1980s, Mike shifted into real estate. He earned his license, made smart investments, and lived quietly in Southern California. But behind the scenes, life wasn't always easy. His creative partner fell on hard times. Their show was remembered, but not always credited fairly. By the 2000s, Mike had all but vanished from public view. In 2006, at the age of just 57, Mike Evans died of throat cancer. The news barely made a ripple in Hollywood, a tragic reflection of how easily television history forgets its early architects. But those who knew him, and those who watched him spar with Archie Bunker in prime time, knew the truth. Mike Evans helped shape the modern sitcom. He changed how black characters were seen. He built something from the inside, then walked away. Quiet, brilliant, undeniably important. 6. Alan Melvin, Barney Hefner. He never played the lead. He didn't need to. Alan Melvin was the kind of actor who lived in the margins. The sidekick, the comic relief. The guy who walked into a scene and made you smile before he even spoke. And yet, over decades of television, he became as familiar as family. To All in the Family fans, he'll always be Barney Hefner, Archie Bunker's drinking buddy, his barstool philosopher, his grumbling mirror. Born in Kansas City but raised in New York, Melvin studied acting at Columbia University before serving in World War II. After the war, he dove into radio and stage work, but it was television that truly embraced him. His range was staggering. Military comedy in The Phil Silvers Show, country charm in Gomer Pyle, sweetness in The Brady Bunch as Alice's meat-loving boyfriend Sam, and later, pure animated mischief as the voice of Magilla Gorilla. When he joined All in the Family in the mid-1970s, Melvin brought to Barney Hefner the perfect balance of obliviousness and warmth. Barney was a man of his time, gruff, traditional, sometimes clueless, but through Melvin's performance, he also became oddly endearing. He was Archie without the venom, a man who didn't understand the world changing around him, but didn't fight it quite as hard either. Off-screen, Melvin was known for his humility. He didn't chase headlines, didn't seek starring roles. He was married to the same woman for over 60 years, raised a family, and never stopped working, from sitcoms to Saturday morning cartoons. When live action dried up, he moved into voice acting, bringing life to characters who lived only in Saturday dreams and cereal commercials. He retired in the late 1990s and faded from public life. Content with what he had contributed. Alan Melvin passed away in 2008 after a battle with cancer. He was 84. He may never have won an Emmy or graced a magazine cover, but for millions of viewers, he was the sound of comfort, the chuckle in the corner, the friend at the bar, the man who always showed up, even if he didn't say much. In a business that worships the spotlight, Alan Melvin built a legacy in the shadows, and television was better for it. 7. Vincent Gardenia, Frank Lorenzo. He wasn't on screen as often as the others, but when Vincent Gardenia appeared, you felt it. As Frank Lorenzo, the progressive, refined Italian-American neighbor who clashed with Archie Bunker's old-world masculinity, Gardenia brought a level of authenticity and bite that made his character stand out in a sea of sitcom archetypes. Born Vincenzo Scognamiglio in Naples, Italy, he immigrated to the United States as a child and grew up in Brooklyn. His father ran an Italian-language acting troupe, and Vincent joined the stage early, learning his craft in small theaters long before Hollywood ever called. He didn't chase fame, he built credibility. On stage, he was electric, winning 2 Obie Awards off-Broadway and a Tony for The Prisoner of Second Avenue. His presence was commanding, but never showy. When he entered All in the Family, Gardenia wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to be real. Frank Lorenzo represented a new kind of American man, cultured, feminist, unconcerned with the macho posturing that defined Archie's world. Their scenes together weren't just sitcom banter. They were ideological boxing matches. And Gardenia held his ground without ever raising his voice. His talent didn't go unnoticed. In 1974, he received his first Oscar nomination for Bang the Drum Slowly, and in 1987, another for Moonstruck, opposite Cher. He had a rare gift. He could swing from quiet pathos to comedy without breaking rhythm. And yet, even with acclaim, Gardenia remained the character actor's character actor, humble, grounded, and deeply respected by his peers. Off-screen, he lived privately. No scandals, no spotlichasin, just a lifetime of good work. He never married, and his closest relationships were often with collaborators and friends from the New York stage scene. In 1990, he won an Emmy for Age-Old Friends, a quiet TV movie about aging with dignity, a role that mirrored his own final years. In 1992, while on tour with a stage production, Vincent Gardenia died suddenly of a heart attack in his hotel room in Philadelphia. He was 72. The curtain fell not on a celebrity, but on an artist, one who carried the torch of serious acting into every role, no matter how small the part or short the scene. To those who watched All in the Family, he was the neighbor who challenged Archie, To those who knew his work more intimately, he was one of the most versatile, underrated actors of his generation. The kind of performer who made everyone else better just by showing up. 8. Betty Garrett, Irene Lorenzo. She had the face of a musical star, the timing of a seasoned comic, and the soul of a fighter. As Irene Lorenzo, the feminist neighbor who could fix a car better than any man on the block, Betty Garrett brought both warmth and bite to all in the family. But long before she traded jabs with Archie Bunker, she had already weathered storms far away from the sitcom stage. Raised in California and trained in New York's renowned neighborhood playhouse, Garrett was a triple threat: a gifted dancer, singer, and actress. She rose swiftly through the MGM ranks, sharing the screen with legends like Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly in lighthearted musicals that showcased her charm and precision. Hollywood loved her until it didn't. In the early 1950s, as political winds shifted, her career was quietly sidelined. Not by scandal or failure, but by circumstance. At the height of her powers, Garrett found herself navigating a new reality, where the phone rang less and opportunities slipped away without explanation. Still, she didn't stop. Alongside her husband Larry Parks, she found new stages, new audiences, and kept performing wherever she could. Her return to television years later wasn't just a comeback. It was a quiet victory. As Irene Lorenzo, she stood out in a show full of strong voices. She played a working-class woman who didn't just challenge Archie Bunker's views. She rewired them. Garrett's Irene wasn't loud or aggressive. She was firm, funny, and unshakably grounded. Garrett would go on to charm a new generation as Edna Babish in Laverne and Shirley, and she never lost her love for live theater. She worked for decades, always with grace, never with bitterness. She passed away peacefully in 2011 at the age of 91. By then, the spotlight had returned, not because she chased it, but because she had earned it. Betty Garrett left behind more than performances. She left behind proof that resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes, it comes with a gentle smile and a quiet refusal to disappear. They made us laugh. They made us uncomfortable. And sometimes, they made us see ourselves more clearly than we wanted to. All in the Family wasn't just a sitcom. It was a social earthquake disguised as comedy. And behind every punchline, every argument, every pause that hung in the air like a challenge, were actors who gave more than just performances. They gave pieces of themselves. Carroll O'Connor exposed America's fears and faults through the gruff humanity of Archie Bunker. Jean Stapleton softened those jagged edges with compassion that felt too real to be scripted. Sherman Hemsley and Isabel Sanford redefined what it meant to succeed and to stand tall while doing it. Mike Evans challenged the system from within, and Alan Melvin reminded us that the sidelines are often where the soul of the story lives. Vincent Gardenia and Betty Garrett, seasoned survivors of stage and screen, proved that even the quietest characters could leave the deepest marks. They came from different worlds. They battled different demons. But in one living room in Queens, they collided, and something unforgettable happened. Now they are gone. Some passed in silence, others with tributes and tears, but all of them left behind echoes. In syndication, in the scripts they helped shape, in the moments we still quote today. To remember them is not just to revisit a show. It's to revisit an era, messy, bold, and unafraid. And if their stories moved you, stay with us. Because behind every great show are lives worth remembering. And we're just getting started.